Hey look, it's Soups from the 60s. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys Batman 66 Superman. Sent to Earth from the dying planet of Krypton as a baby, Kal-El was found by farmers Martha and Jonathan Kent and raised their son Clark. As Clark grew up, the radiation from the Earth's yellow sun gave him extraordinary powers, which he kept hidden. Now, though fully grown, he uses his powers to protect his adopted world as Superman. From meteoring away from the planet Krypton to meeting the Cape Crusader. Before we get a closer look at the new Batman 66 Superman, let me go ahead and thank the folks first over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample we could have a look at. Based on many of the online sites, it seems to be that these are getting released in October of 2023, so they should be dropping soon. I'm going to, though, drop the tape measure into this review so we can actually see how tall the Man of Steel stands. In this case, though, he's about the same size, give or take, as the rest of the classic series Batman figures. That the figure is about 6 inches in height, or it's going to be about 15 centimeters tall. I did bring up bats, so why don't we bring out bats? Here's what the figure looks like with the Adam West Batman that we have looked at before. Height-wise, at least from their bodies, they're built about the same. It looks to be the case, though, that Superman has just a slightly longer head, giving him just a little bit more height over Adam West. Other figures we can also do as well for comparison's sake. Let's bring in the boy Wonder Robin. Let's bring in also a figure that also appears in 66 series run. This is also what he looks like with Batgirl. And another figure from the 66 figure line. Here's also what the figure looks like with Two-Face. Now, unlike Batgirl and Two-Face that both would have appeared in the pages of the 66 Batman comic run, I don't think Superman has yet appeared in the comics. This might be just McFarlane's team designing a character as he would have appeared necessarily in the 66 comics, as he certainly would have never appeared in the original series. The figure, though, comes included with a couple of accessories, both of which can be harmful to Soup's health. He comes with a larger shard. I guess this would be kind of more of a shard, and then this would be kind of more of a formation of kryptonite crystals. Now with this, you can actually have this one at least be flat, so not that it'd probably be best advised to have this so close to Soup's body. You can have that right next to Superman, and this one I don't know really what I'm going to do with necessarily, as Superman doesn't come included with any gripping hands. He has a fist hand on one side, and then he has a flying hand on the other. I mean, not that he would really want to be carrying around kryptonite anyways, but he really wouldn't have the means if he really wanted to. We're going to move those accessories out of the way. Onomatopoeia bubbles, by the way, will not come included with Superman. Could you imagine, though, the onomatopoeia bubbles that would come included with Superman? I mean, considering that both Burt Ward Robin and Adam West Batman would have come included with, like, pows and kapowies, what would Superman would have come included with? That's a question I don't know if I have the answers for. One thing I did want to, though, talk about when it comes to the figure is the fact that he does have, like Batman before, a cloth cape. The cloth cape, as you can see, is attached the same way that basically Batman's would have been. So let's just bring in Batman here so you can see that not necessarily the samesies between the two, but more the fact that they're attached to the neck about the same way. Unfortunately, though, by not having a cowl piece like Batman would have had, which is obviously this figure right here, Superman unfortunately has to now rely on a little collar piece that wraps around the top of his. Kind of gives him a strange look to it, because it looks like, obviously, there's the sculpting right there. They almost wanted to kind of finish the look of the cape, but I feel in a way it kind of gives him this strange looking collar. It gives him almost more like an alien look to it, which is kind of fun for me to say that. But I don't know if I necessarily like the little ring of plastic that they put to the top of it. It's molded well, but I don't feel it really belongs necessarily with the rest of the cape. I feel like in a case like this, if only they could have found a way to attach the cape underneath, say, his neck, and then just have the cape kind of be attached out from there. I mean, it sits really boxy, obviously, on the back of the figure's body, but again, by adding this little ring of plastic, I feel like it's a little more of a detractor, unfortunately, of Superman's cape. Speaking of his cape, though, unfortunately, though, the way he was packaged inside, he had a little bit of tape at the bottom of the cape. I just realized I rhymed there. A little bit of tape, though, on the bottom, and I tried my best carefully to remove the tape. It looks like it's done a little bit of damage to Superman's cape. It's a bit of a bummer. Material-wise, though, just to look at the two, it seems to be a very similar type of material. Obviously, Superman has red, Batman has blue. As for the head sculpt, I'm not sure necessarily what they based the head sculpt from. I'm sure there may have been rumors at one point that Superman could have appeared in maybe the 60s Batman series. But I think right now, I mean, we can only kind of really speculate as to where this design could have come from. I mean, in a way, I kind of would have hoped that they could have designed the figure a little bit around the portrait of George Reeves, the actor, of course, that was made for famous for playing Superman. Actually, I think even predating the 60s series by just a little bit. But I think if they had just only found a way to make this look a little bit more like George Reeves, for example. Instead, we kind of get just kind of a basic looking Superman. Again, not knowing necessarily if this is supposed to be tied to an actor that at one point was rumored to be maybe even cameoing as Superman in the series. Again, it's not a bad looking head sculpt, but it doesn't look necessarily, I feel, like Superman. And I'm not really sure what I would expect a Superman figure head sculpt to look like. I think my biggest thing is the fact that I'm looking at the time frame in which this figure would have, in theory, existed. And I keep thinking I want to see George Reeves, the head sculpt-wise. I mean, for head-wise, for what it is at least, it's painted really well. The coloring around the cheeks, as you can see, is a slightly darker shade than the otherwise color of the plastic that he has for the rest of his face. The eyebrows, the eyes, and the hair have all been painted really well on the figure's head. It's not necessarily a bad head sculpt. It's just not one I really necessarily identify with. As for the rest of the figure's body, of course, it's classic-looking Superman. He sort of does have about the same build as Adam West, so it doesn't look like necessarily Superman's working out any bit more. I will say, though, like looking at his abdomen area, it does look like he's got a little bit more ab muscles than maybe Adam West. Adam West was never really known for a Cape Crusader that had really muscular bodies. But obviously, though, when it comes to Superman, you can see he's got a little bit more of an abdomen muscle right there. Really large cape. I like the way that's been printed on the front of the figure's body. And of course, really primary colors being used for Superman all around. So you got the more brighter blues being handled for the majority of the costume. Some red for his trunks, some red for the symbol, of course, there on the front. He's got the yellow utility belt. It's not even really a utility belt, just a yellow belt. And then, of course, he's got the red Superman boots down below here. Unfortunately, one thing that gets omitted on the back is the fact that the figure doesn't have the little Superman logo on the back of his cape, but that's okay. Flipping around so you can see like what's happening behind the scenes. The paint's actually really handled well here. Don't really have any necessarily issues with the figure except for really the way they have attached the cape. Like again, if they had only, I'm just going to kind of bring this back just only by a little bit. If they had maybe only just had the neck, for example, be something that would have attached over top of the cape, I might even see if I can maybe bring this back just a little bit and have the figure kind of displayed with that. I almost feel like the cape looks a little too boxy, kind of around the shoulder area. I mean, it was also the case, obviously, when we looked at the Adam West Batman, but it feels even more obvious by maybe the fact that they added a little ring there at the top of the collar. For Superman's articulation, starting first, of course, with his head sculpt, it rotates all the way around. The head does look up only by just a little bit, though. And it also looks down, also about the same. You can also rock it back and forth, but mileage may then vary. You can also as well take the arms and rotate them all the way around. Just be careful that you don't snag the cape. You never want to pull on Superman's cape. You bring the arms out as well. They sit easily at 90 degrees. You can also bend the elbow as well. That's also the same, also on the side as well. You can rotate, yes, the forearm. You can rotate, sure, the hands. Rotate all the way around. Waist swivels on Supes. And, of course, when it comes to these figures, they're going to be very limited when it comes to leg articulation. So you're only really going to be able to get the means to swivel these legs forward and back. They, though, abruptly stop when they meet the Kryptonian behind. What's rather interesting, though, about the behind of Superman is that the coloring on it seems a little bit different than the colors that they would have used for the sides. I don't know if this has actually been molded here in red plastic, and this has simply been painted in red, but the colors of the red aren't 100%, but they're pretty close, though. The figure also does have, of course, knee articulation. The knees do allow the lower legs to rotate back and forth, and that's basically all you're getting with these more limited articulation retro figures. As a side note, though, Superman does have, like the other figures before, peg holes in the undersides of his feet. You know, again, it's one of those interesting what-if stories. Like, what if Superman had teamed actually up with Batman in the 60s series? Never really happened, and I don't believe it also happened either in the 60s comic run yet. At one point, we obviously did get the cameo from the Green Hornet. Now, that would be an interesting figure to see McFarlane's team release under the 60s Batman series. And because, of course, it appeared also in the series and not in the comics, I think it actually may have even appeared in the comics as well. I would definitely love to get a Green Hornet and a Kato. But going, though, back to Superman, I think he's overall a nice-looking figure. He scales well, obviously, with all the other Batman figures we've already had a look at. Let's not knock him over in the process. And though, again, like, while I don't think 100%, I'm not 100% sure if he actually did appear in the comics, we can at least bring in, the other figures that we've also looked at from the 66 comic run. The only other thing I would certainly say about some of these figures, at least, you probably have already seen it by him falling over twice, is that sometimes the figures don't stand all that well. But at least though he didn't come included with a display stand, which is one disappointing thing about this line, is that they don't come included with display stands. You can most definitely use one from another figure, like DC Multiverse figures. All use the same size diameter peg as the Batman figure feet that we're looking at in this review here. Now, actor George Reeves did unfortunately die in 1959, so it would have been impossible anyways for him to have appeared as Superman in the 66 Batman series, but one could certainly have dreamed what that team-up would have looked like having both George Reeves and Adam West in their costumes on screen battling bad guys. I don't know if it would necessarily still be a match of them just powing and kapowing all the bad guys on the screen, as Superman could basically just obliterate the entire room. He'd have to crash through a brick wall. That's what Superman always did in the original series. But going a little back to this figure, still though, one disappointment about them is not necessarily the build of the body. I like the head sculpt that they used, but without actually getting a likeness down for George Reeves, it sort of reads to me like sort of more just a generic 60s actor that they just happen to have wearing a Superman costume. All the other figures, of course, that we've looked at from the 60s series so far, with them already having actors and actresses portray that role, it's easy then to look at those figures and say, this looks better like Julie Newmar, or this looks a lot like Vincent Price. But without really knowing who the actor is that they're trying to base the Man of Steel figure around, for me at least, it sort of just reads as a generic actor sort of wearing the Superman's outfit. I don't know if I have as much attachment had they only had, say, the chance to do a likeness of George Reeves. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that they just couldn't get the likeness from the estate of George Reeves. But imagine, if you will, if we got ourselves a smaller version of George Reeves Superman in the same outfit, in the same build of body, either in a colorized version or, hey, why not, a black and white version. Sign me up for that. Either way, though, a big thank you to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample of the Batman 66 series Superman, even though he never really appeared in the 60s Batman series. As far as I know, he never appeared in the 60s Batman comic either. If you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you certainly do want to stick around for more Batman reviews, hey, just an FYI, by the way, we are going to be looking at some more Batman 66 series, courtesy of the folks over at McFarlane Toys. So make sure you don't want to miss out on any of that you're hitting that subscribe button down below and you're turning on the bell notification. Of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.